Welcome back to the Wrong Advice Podcast. I'm your host, John Pachuto, and I'm very excited to have my good friend, Mr. Drue Schnelle, aka Drue Photo, on with us today. Drue, how you doing, buddy?
Dude, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me, man. I love podcasts and I love talking to people. So, dude, I'm excited, especially to talk to you, man. I think it's going to be a blast.
I appreciate that. Can you give a quick introduction to the listeners and who Mr. Drue Photo is?
Yeah, so my name's Drue, spelled Drue. Never been able to get a cool little gas station name tag, but I'm a portrait photographer. I'm not a portrait photographer. I'm a photographer. I specialize in portraits and dabbled in products, dabbled in streets, dabble in everything photography, but mainly portrait stuff. I gained an audience back in 2019 for posting, behind the scenes photos and the final images with my portrait work. So that's what I'm most well known for, as well as the product stuff. So I've been able to work with companies like Adidas and Lexar and just some really cool things that I never thought I would be doing, honestly, when I picked up a camera. So yeah, dude, it's wild, all from social media. So yeah, that's a little bit about me, and that's at least the surface, right?
Yeah, that's pretty
But
cool.
yeah, thanks for having me here, man.
Oh, I'm very excited for this conversation. So tell me, when did you pick up a camera for the first time?
Yeah, so it was probably 6 years ago. What year is it? We're in 2022, huh? Wow.
Somehow.
6, 7 years. I can't remember. It was about that time. I actually got the camera and never used it for probably the first year. Like, I used it enough to like learn like what shutter speed was and what aperture was, but I didn't know really much, right? I was just proud that I could shoot manual mode at that time. And so it was probably about 6 years ago I picked up a camera and just started fiddling with it and that sort of thing.
And what were you doing, like, work-wise when that, like, for a career?
That's a good question. I worked at the Apple store.
Nice.
Yeah, I was a Apple
Genius.
retail employee. Not a genius. I wasn't a genius. I was like, I don't want that responsibility. You guys can do that. I'll stick to the sales specialist at the front, So I was like the person primarily that when you walk into a store, they have what's called like on point, which is basically just the person trying to get you to where you need to be. It's like, hey, are you here to buy stuff? Okay, let me get you with my sales guy. Or, hey, you here to fix something? Let me have you talk to my, technician over here that can help you out with that. So I was kind of that, as well as sales specialist, but I'd also worked there for so long that I knew a lot of the technical side of things too. I just didn't want to, they weren't paying anybody enough to go switch over to that side. So I was an Apple specialist.
That's pretty cool.
Worked there for 4 years.
Where'd you grow up?
I'm from Kansas City, Kansas. Well, that's what I say. It's a little bit more south from Kansas City, about 30 minutes. But just very middle to high class suburban area. So honestly, very bland. And getting older, recognizing that it's weird. It's its own little bubble. It's a really nice area. So it's very nice, very clean, good public school systems, very, family oriented and all that stuff. And did you hear that Discord notification?
No, I did not. No big deal.
Okay. I just didn't want that to cut that.
Yeah, I didn't get it, but it's all good.
Okay, cool.
So growing up, I had a very similar upbringing, upper middle class, white suburban high school. I think we had like 4 black kids in my high school. So not very diverse, a lot of Italians, a lot of Jewish kids, like, mostly upper white middle class. Did well in school, went to an okay college, fucked around for 4 years. Don't know how I graduated on time. And spent like my entire 20s just doing whatever the fuck I wanted without any real direction or idea of what I wanted to be or do with my life. But I have always felt like everything about that time period was the next thing, right? So it was very focused on graduating high school to get into college, doing okay in college so you can get the first job, get the first job so you can get the second, the third, and the fifth job. But talk to me about that, like sort of time frame in your life where, you know, you're going through high school in the college area, and then like sort of how your career ended up falling into the photography realm.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Are you ready for this?
I am.
Hey, dude, yeah, I'll try and keep it short because it could be a very easily a long conversation. But yeah, so from like high school into college and to where I am now, there's been a lot that's gone on. So just a little pre-history. Before high school, I'm a very athletic person, so I played traveling sports for, you know, baseball, basketball, soccer. So that was my life going into high school, right? But in high school, I was freshman year, I was 4'10", 90 pounds.
Wow.
So super small. Didn't go through puberty till senior year. Yeah, so I had to take growth hormone for 3 years in high school.
Wow.
So a shot in the
Legally.
butt every single
Nice.
night. Yes, legally. I know. I'm like, dude, I wish I would have known more, bro. I would have been like getting yoked, bro. Like just came out of this transformation just like a ripped fucking, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm like, because it was like while I was doing it was funny because like Roger Clemens, a pitcher for the New York Yankees, was getting in trouble for taking HGH, which is what I was taking. And I'm like, wait, what? I'm literally just taking steroids is what I'm doing, legal steroids. And so, yeah, so I did that. And basically, since I was so small, all the high school teams didn't really, I just made all the worst teams, even though like outside of high school, I was playing with all the kids that made varsity. And so I just was like done with sports at that time, right? It's just what I had done my entire life. I'm like, I'm sick of this. I can't do it. People were getting bigger and I was just so tiny, right? To put it into perspective, at 16, they did like a bone scan of myself, and my bone structure was that of a 12-year-old when I was 16.
Wow.
So I looked like I was 12 as a junior almost in high school.
Wow.
So yeah, so wild. So I got into video games during this time, and video games took over my life. I played Call of Duty, a lot of Call of Duty, a lot of crazy stories in there that we just don't have time to get into. But over those 4 years in high school, I built an audience on Call of Duty YouTube back in like 2008, 2009, right? So very early YouTube. So I was technically one of the first kind of like wave of content creators on YouTube that got paid.
Wow.
Yeah, I was partnered with Machinima, which there's a whole backstory on that. But I was partnered with them and I was getting paid. It was $2.50 per 1,000 views, right? Wow. So no matter where the views came from, whether it be a video that I posted a year ago or, you know, whatever, anything that happened in that month, that's what I would get paid for, which was fantastic when I went into college, right?
Yeah.
And so basically at the end of my Call of Duty career, I had 23,000 subscribers in 2011. So I know all the big people in gaming right now, a good chunk of them were subscribed to me at one point because I was kind of like that first generation kind of Call of Duty sniper kid, right? All the montages, all the trick shotting, all of that stuff. I was there before all of that.
Wow.
Yeah, I was a part of that community. So I'm also a Call of Duty sniping founding father in some people's minds, right?
That's awesome.
So that's cool. It's cool. It's a cool thing, but it was just really bad for me. You know, online internet gaming community was extremely toxic back then. It was very ego driven. Like you just had to be. That's just how you survived in that environment, right? If anybody was on the internet at that time, you would understand. And so it's just really bad for my mental health. This is also when I discovered alcohol, and discovered alcohol at 18 because I was like, I'm going to college. Everybody drinks, right? Yeah. I've seen the movies. I should probably try this out. Basically fell in love with alcohol because I was depressed. I had low self-esteem. You know, probably didn't help that I was super short and didn't go through puberty till senior year, got braces in college. You know, it's the
tale as old as time.
The recipe for being a player in college, right? And so I got into alcohol. It was really bad. I was a blackout drinker. Only drank for a year, and at 19, I went to rehab. I went to
Wow.
rehab in Minnesota. Um, it was Hazelden at the time. It's now the Betty Ford Foundation. And yeah, I was suicidal and a blackout drinker. So, two bad things, not going together. And my uncle actually growing up was a crack cocaine addict, and he had gone to Hazelden. And at that point, he had been like 10 years clean, right? And so my family was adamant. They're like, because you got an interview to go in there. They're like, you make your story sound awful. You better get into this rehab facility. Like my grandma's like yelling at me. She's like, you tell them the worst. Which, back then when I was thinking about it, I was like, man, I don't want to lie to these people, but it's like, but you're going to soften your own experiences, right? It's not going to be like, especially if you're in that situation. It's like, I was, when I was intoxicated, like trying to jump in front of cars, to kill myself. I was just that, it's just how it was for whatever reason. I was in a very dark place, a very low place in my life. And so, went to rehab at 19, had a great experience. I probably didn't figure my shit out till like 3 weeks in. So I'm glad I figured it out, but it was a life-changing experience. I love talking about it because it's just so incredible. And I want to be the person that changes that reaction that everybody has when I tell somebody to go to rehab. The day that I tell somebody random that I went to rehab and their reaction is like, congratulations, dude, that's awesome, I will be happy, because the number one thing I get is, oh, I'm sorry. And it's like, well, why are you sorry? Like, why? Yeah, this isn't, no, you shouldn't be sorry.
Yeah.
Like, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me.
Well, I was going to say,
it's sad that people don't know that.
Yeah. Well, number one, obviously, congratulations. That's incredible, because you are now, what,
Thank you,
10
boss.
years sober?
Almost, bro. It's I just hit 9.5 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
Which is crazy.
So, I mean, in my experience, and I have a family of a couple members of my family who have alcoholism, and I had an uncle who passed away from alcoholism. So like I'm acutely aware of the addiction that how it can play in someone's life. I'm not sure I know very many people sub 25 that can recognize in themselves that they need to get help in order to live. That is an incredibly strong mindset to be able to be that level of self-aware at such a young age.
It took a while, and the big experience for me was so I was like obsessed with finding somebody, right? I was such a hopeless romantic. I was like, I'm gonna find somebody that's gonna fix all my issues, right? Like I was just really obsessed with
rom-com,
like
that
women and
life.
all that stuff. And I think it's just because I never got to experience that growing up, just because I was so short and all that. And so I think that definitely plays into it. But yeah, I had an experience in rehab where I was into this girl which you're not supposed to fraternize in rehab, because they're like, you're here for you. You're not supposed to be talking to the other sex and all that. And she started talking to somebody else while we were like still, it's stupid. I'm like, dude, I was talking to her for like a week or whatever, but like I was so into her, and then it just like broke me completely again, right? And I was like, why do I keep doing this to myself? Like, why is this happen? And this is like the third week into rehab, right? They literally called my mom and were like, he's not doing good. Like, he's not treating this seriously, like all this stuff. And I almost got kicked out because you're not supposed to do it. They found out about it, right? But at that moment, I was like, I just want to be happy. That's what I put on top of my list of everything. Everything else moved aside, and the only want I wanted in my life was to be happy. And so I took everything and did everything that I could to be happy. I started taking the meditation seriously. I started doing daily affirmations. I started going to all the extracurricular activities that they had at rehab, because they have all these things. You don't have to go to them. They're not forcing you to do it, right? Mm-hmm. It's really up to you to do that. And so started going to all these things, started reading the book, started, really diving in and like really figuring out myself. And as a 19-year-old, I was probably the youngest person there. And people really admired that. And something that I struggled with was that my story wasn't anything close to a lot of these people that I went to rehab with, right? Like I've heard terrible things,
Yeah.
extremely sad, terrible things that have happened to these people. Um, and I people did question. They were like, "Why are you even here? Like, you just seem like a frat boy that just had too much fun." And that I really thought about that. Like a lot of the times I'm like, "Why am I here?" Because it's like all I did was black out on the weekends and wanted to die. But it's not nothing compared to
Losing
some of the
everything. Yeah.
stories that I'm hearing, and like they've lost their house, their family, their loved ones. They've been abused, they like homeless, like all the like crazy stuff, right? And so but I realized that I was just fortunate and got there early. I figured out the issue earlier. I got kind of forced into the situation, right? But I'm grateful for that because I figured it out early. And it's still a daily thing, right? Like every single day, it's something that I got to work on. Even this last year, I've been slipping up with everything. And the recent experience with my brother, who we just dropped off at rehab the other day, has been very eye opening to me. And it's been a lot of just reminders. I've been in Big Brother rehab mode for the last week, and so it's been good. It's been a good reminder, even as scary as the situation was, almost seeing my brother die essentially. It's been good. It's been a good experience. It's been a good reminder. Anytime anything like that happens, it's always a reminder to why I'm doing what I'm doing, why I went in the first place. And yeah, so no, I am very proud of myself as a 19-year-old for going into rehab and doing that. I got a lot of praise from the people who were in their 30s, 40s, 50s. They were honestly shocked that I was there. And so,
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean,
no, it
that
was good.
that level of self-awareness is obviously incredibly uncommon. And you said a couple things that I both loved and I think are crucially important, is that you wanted to be happy. I think it's very easy for people to go about their lives thinking that external validation will provide them that happiness, right? So like the whoever they're dating or whatever car they're driving or whatever job they have will provide them the validation that will make them happy. And then when you start getting the things that are supposed to validate you and give you happiness and they don't, you have a tough time figuring out, well, why am I not satisfied? Why am I not happy? Because I was there, were it not for the pandemic, like I would have been working a miserable job forever that I wasn't happy doing, but it paid me a lot of money. So that made me happy, right? Because I was making a
Yeah.
lot of money. And I think to have that level of awareness at 19, to know that you weren't happy, that you were questioning your desire to be alive, and then go fix it, is incredible. I am super curious how the last couple weeks with your brother, how that level of stress has impacted a multitude of things, right? Your creativity, your soberness, and everything that kind of factors into your day-to-day life.
Yeah, no, it's been it's been an experience. To tell you real quick what happened. Basically, he almost drank himself to death. He was 5 times over the legal limit.
Jeez.
Almost put himself into basically he was in like an alcohol induced coma.
Hmm.
He was just blacked out. He was at work when it happened,
Oh my
and
God.
basically he passed out at work and they didn't know if he was breathing, so they called the ambulance. So when I got that call from his girlfriend, it was really weird. I reacted very weirdly to the situation. I like became super numb because she's just like, "Hey, Kyler is in the ambulance. He's on his way to the hospital. All I know is that they said she heard in the background somebody say, 'Check if he's still breathing.'" And she's
Jesus.
like, and that's yeah. So I just became super numb, just like, very robotic almost in a way. It's very kind of scary, honestly, when I think
Defense
about it.
mechanism. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just like, okay, what hospital is he headed to? We'll meet you there. Drive safe. We'll see you in a little bit. And we got there, and it was nobody really knew what was happening because they gave him Narcan and that sort of stuff to see if it was narcotics, and that didn't do anything. So it wasn't narcotics. They thought it could have been possibly like some benzos mixed with alcohol, just because of how clonked out he was.
Mm-hmm.
Because they couldn't get him to get up. They were trying to get him to get up to pee so they could see what was in his system, so they could, if they needed to do anything, they were able to help him out. But yeah, that didn't work. And obviously I was the first one to go in because I was the only family there. And that was a rush. Seeing my brother in the hospital bed, just like foam coming out of his mouth and like all these things hooked into him. And, I'm seeing all these like icons next to these people's names, and I see his name. It's like got all these little icons with like hearts and like X's. And I'm like, this is freaking me. I don't know what's going on because nobody had explained it to me. Like no doctors had come up to me at that point. They were literally just like, he just came in. He's unconscious. We don't know what's wrong with him. And so yeah, so they like literally they took me back. They're like, here he is. Somebody will come talk to you. I sat there for 30 to 45 minutes probably before anybody came in and told me kind of like what was actually happening. Which, I should have like been like, I should have been more like, what's going on with my brother, all that stuff. But, I'm like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, can I touch anything? Should I touch him? Am I allowed to touch him? I don't know.
Yeah.
So I was just like sitting in the chair because I don't have hospital experience. So, but yeah, so that's the situation, right? So just very scary, all that. To get back to your question, it's been very good because it's been a reminder for me to check on my mental health. So, it opened up a lot of conversation with the people I'm closest with. I've been reaching out to a lot of people almost every day to just check in on people and just to be fully transparent with people. I'm trying to be good at that and just let people know how I feel, even if it's something that I feel like I've told them 1,000 times or whatever. It's like I need to, I just want them to know, because I don't want anything. Well, one, I don't want to, left unsaid. And I don't also, it's like, it's not fair for me to expect that people understand how I feel about them, right? If I haven't told them, I can't expect them to truly know how I feel about them. So I've been doing that. It's also reopened the door with my dad a little bit. So like family background, we're all like great. You know what I mean? Like we're all like close, but we're not. Like we'll go like I haven't talked to my sister probably. Like when I went and visited Casey, we went to lunch, but before that, it's probably been like 6 months,
Mm-hmm.
From like talking to my sister at all. I have no idea what my sister's doing. So it's like, we're all still like very close and very supportive, but like I'll go 4 or 5 months without talking to my dad at all, or the same, with my sister. And so it's been one of those things where it's like, we need to put an effort into knowing each other. I talked to my dad and I was like, I don't even really know you besides my dad.
Yeah.
I have no idea about your childhood or the struggles you went through. I don't know how you felt after your mom passed away. Like, I don't, and I would like to hear those things. I would like to, as an adult now, I would like to understand those things. So then maybe it will help me understand things about myself.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing. It's really like right now it's very like self deep dive, right? So I'm telling everybody, I'm like, just all I'm asking you to do is ask a little bit more questions to yourself. At night, ask yourself, why do I get angry at these things? Why do I react in this way? And just, try and break it down. And like, I'm like, that's it.
True.
Like just a little baby step.
Let me let you in on a secret. What you've uncovered there is a cheat code to living a happy and healthy life, because the vast majority of human beings will spend the entirety of their lives going about things prior to where you were, right? Oh, cool. I haven't talked to my sister in 6 months. No big deal. I know she's fine. I see her post on Instagram. She's good. But the truth of the matter is, fucking shitty things happen all the time in life, and it's very possible that you could lose someone very important to you without having them know how you feel about them, or like you said, to your father's point, knowing who they are. And I think that level of awareness, and I keep using that word, but it's super
Hmm.
important to be understanding of what you want out of your relationships.
Yep.
And people don't necessarily spend that time doing that anymore. They're much more focused on their day-to-day lives.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to have my father on my podcast. It's probably my favorite episode ever because my dad is a very old school Italian, doesn't tell me he loves me, like just, Goomba, like whatever, right? He is
Yeah.
cliche Italian. And it was one of those things where my podcast has now been something that he's constantly asking me questions about. Who are your guests? Who's coming on? Can't
Oh,
wait to
that's
listen.
cool.
And he's 75 years old. He barely knows how to turn on his fucking computer, but it's become like this bonding point for us. And it's great, right? But like, had I not gone through the effort of understanding that like the amount of time that I have with this man in my life is limited. It could be a week, a month, a
Yeah.
year, 10 years, and I want to make the most of that time. So you have uncovered a cheat code. I think it's crucially important for people to understand that regret will kill you, right? It will
Yeah.
tear you up for the remainder of your life, wishing you had said one more thing or texted one more time or had one more meal with the person. And when they're gone, you don't have the ability to be anything other than sad about it.
Yeah. No, it's a wild thing, man, and like we could talk about this rehab stuff for hours because I love these conversations, and the big reason is it's a reminder for me. Every time I talk about this, it's me putting it out into the world, and you have to do that. You need to speak it out, and that's how you're going to be able to like digest it again. I've been kind of like explaining it to people. It's like you need to throw all this stuff up so you can see what is in your system, right? And then you need to piece it together into something that you can digest and
Sure.
like slightly understand more. And that's really that's what rehab is all about. It's all about self-awareness and finding your true self. It has nothing to do with the drugs or whatever. It's literally rehab is school on how to be happy.
Yeah.
That is what rehab is. It is not obviously it helps with all those types of things, but rehab is needed for everybody, not just addicts. It is needed for everybody because it's anybody that struggles with mental health or depression or anything like that. Because I think, like, when I think about it, right, like my drug of choice was alcohol, right? So Drue, alcoholic. Hey, Drue. but like I was truly addicted to how I felt in that time. I was addicted to my lifestyle, my way of thinking, my self-pity, my just like my mindset. I was okay with being in that sad part, right? Like in when I was there, it didn't feel like I was okay with it, right? Because I hated it, but I was. I was so comfortable in that space that I didn't want to get help for a long time, or I didn't know how, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I was more addicted to that. And I feel like a lot of people are, and they just don't realize it. Not necessarily addicted because that's a strong word, but just more like comfortable.
Yeah.
You're comfortable in this spot. Even if it sucks and you hate it and you feel terrible and all these things, it's like you are still comfortable in here because you're not actively doing things to fix it. All these people are always like, oh, I'm depressed or oh, I'm sad and all these things. And it's like, okay, well, what are you doing to fix that? And, they'll name off some things, but it's not an everyday thing. It's like, well, what are you doing to be happy?
Yeah.
This isn't a just a light switch that turns on sort of thing. This is workout. This is a workout. Are you meditating? Are you doing daily affirmations? Are you telling yourself good things about yourself? All these things, and people are always like, oh, it's so hard. It's so hard. I'm like, yeah, because you've let yourself get so low, bro.
Yeah.
Like, of course it's going to be a climb. It's a big climb.
You know what's
And
interesting? I think you touched on something that's incredibly important. It's like a lot of people don't know that they're not happy, right? Because you go through your life checking boxes and you assume that it's going to fill you up to the place that check box is going to do. And when it doesn't, you're presented with a very difficult conundrum of, well, I have the white picket fence and the 2.5 kids and the nice car and the great job, but I don't feel fulfilled. Not
Yeah.
enough people spend the time asking themselves those questions of introspectiveness that I think
And
therapy is a huge,
yeah,
sort of tool to sort of
that's all it
unlocking.
is.
Yeah. So you're
That's all
you're
it is.
so you're like 20, right? And then fast forward a couple years, you graduate. You're a couple years
Yes.
sober into your
Yes.
journey. Um,
Back to the art stuff.
no, I'm just wondering, like, so how did photography come to you, right? So like,
Yeah.
and what was your journey like? Because I would love to get an idea of how it has positively impacted you, sort of throughout the
Yeah.
last 6 or 7 years.
Yeah. So basically, so I, got out of rehab, right? And before that, it was all Call of Duty, right? All Xbox Call of Duty. Before I came home, because I stayed in rehab for about 5 months.
Wow.
So yeah, typically it's like a 30-day thing, but I was like, I after the 30 days, I was like, I want to make sure, I just want to make sure I'm good. So stayed another month, and then I was like, after that, I was like, I just really want to make sure I'm good. Stayed an extra 2 months, and then after that, I was like, I just for sure 1,000% just I know that I'm good, but I just want to make sure. Like I just don't want to go home and mess up. So I'm going to stay another 2 months. So stay there for about 5 months in winter, which is a blast in Minnesota. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
Walking to work, like an hour to work in 0-degree weather was a blast. But it builds character. It builds character.
Yeah. Arctic
But
blast.
I came back and was like, Mom, sell my Xbox, sell my computer. I don't need any. As much as I wanted it, right? I'm like, I need to get it out of my house because it's just not healthy for me, right? So got rid of all that. And then I was in a period where I had like no hobbies. I wasn't doing anything except for working just typical jobs, right? I worked grocery, which don't work grocery. It's awful. Hated grocery. Anybody that says that they enjoyed working at a grocery store is crazy. I don't care what they say. It was a terrible experience for me. Went from that, I went to Freebirds, which is like a Chipotle, so I can roll a mad burrito. So if you need help learning how to roll burrito, I got you. And in between that, it was just like I don't really have anything that I'm doing outside of work. Like I was just working all the time, like consistently. And yeah, I was still on Twitter because Twitter was still kind of my thing. I was a part of what was called Tumblr Twitter while I was in rehab, which they were like, "You need to get off of Twitter. It's not good." But I'm like, "That's where all my friends are." I don't have friends outside of this because I'd been on the internet for so long. Like, from high school on up, all of my close friends were people that I had made connections with on the internet. And so that was a very hard thing in rehab to do. But I, obviously was also on Tumblr at the time and got really inspired by the Pacific Northwest vibes, like the faded blacks, the tall, trees, the windy roads, the cloudy, wet reflections, all that stuff. Right, that was popular in 2016, I believe. But that was what got me to buy a camera because I was like, I want to go do that. That looks super cool. I would love to do that. And I ended up getting a camera, ended up just using it for self-portraits because I was still Tumblr boy, feeling my confidence, like posting all these selfies, being a major just dick bag. Like honestly, it was so bad. I'm like, I took my confidence from rehab and just got even worse of a person. It was, I can recognize that now, but I took advantage of that. I was like, oh my gosh, I have confidence and people actually girls want to talk to me. Like this is crazy. And I went wild with it. Right. But,
Yeah.
But no, that's how I picked up a camera. And like I said before, I didn't really use it for like a long time. I don't know. I tried doing it, but I was like, dude, I live in Kansas. Like, there's no big, windy, tall trees and windy roads. Like, how do I take these photos when I live in Kansas? You can't, is the thing. I mean, you could take photos and fun photos in Kansas, but it's like that specific style. It wasn't possible, right?
Sure.
And I got one of my buddies that I would go out and shoot with. Basically, it was just one of those things where me and my buddy would go shoot and we would like swap, right? Like he'd be like, model for me, I'll model for you. We would go to like parking garages at 2 a.m. and take like moody, like, smoking photos with like smoke in the air. And we thought it was super cool, right?
Yeah.
But he was like, hey, I got this model that wants to shoot. Bro, you got to come with me. Like, I can't do that on my own. And I was like, oh, okay. I mean, yeah, I'm down. I'm super nervous because I've never done that either. But ended up hanging out with this quote unquote model, right? Her name's Mariah, actually one of my best friends now. And just like really connected with her when we were taking photos, and it was a lot of fun. And that's when I really fell in love with portrait work. Was because I got to meet all these people, right? I started meeting all these really cool people. I got to work with these great, awesome models in the area. And so I started building like a little audience in Kansas City around portrait work. And it was just like a fun thing, just like going out and shooting twice a week or whatever. And just, I don't know, just trying to go out and shoot as much as possible because it was, for me, it was like, I'm not going to learn unless I go out and do this. And so it was like, it was just like little things. It's like every time I go out, it's like you learn something because it's like the light is slightly different than the day, the previous day or whatever. And so it's you have slightly different conditions. How am I going to, solve this like puzzle essentially? That's kind of how I think of photography. It's a lot of problem solving, right? And so I thrive in that. I love that. But yeah, I just started making a lot of connections through it, right? And so I made a really solid friend group in Kansas City with photographers and models, and it's honestly the best group I've ever had. I've never had that anywhere else, and I was very spoiled. I didn't realize how great that group was until it had fell apart, right? And I had moved, and so I missed that a ton. But that's what really helped me get started with my photography thing was portrait stuff. That's why I fell in love with portraits. It was being able to connect with people and create really cool, fun photos. And then, there's even more to that story, but I'll let you.
When did you?
I don't want to talk too much.
When did you start seeing like growth on social media? How much time had you put in, and what was that feeling like when you started amassing like a substantial following, and then that grew even more? And like, what was that sort of like for you?
Yeah, it was wild. So basically on Instagram, I created my account when I went to a photo meetup. My friend dragged me to a photo meetup, right? And they're like, "What's your Instagram?" and all this stuff. I'm like, "Oh, I don't, I'm like, I don't want to give them my personal Instagram." At that time, it was just still a bunch of old photos of me being dummy intoxicated with my boys in college, just terrible. I've since then reported the account because I lost access to it. I was like, this person's impersonating me. Take it down.
Oh my
They
God.
took it down, which is good.
That's
Which is good.
funny.
So it's not there anymore. But I made the account Drue Photo, and I have screenshots of me having like 3 followers and like following like 5 people because I took a screenshot when I first went to that photo meetup. But I started, building an audience in Kansas City. I started just hanging out with other people in Kansas City that did the photo stuff, that had an audience. And for whatever reason, people just really enjoyed my portrait work. I didn't really like, I don't know, I didn't do anything major. It was just, I was just doing it all the time. I posted, well, I guess I was doing a lot. I posted every single day on Instagram in 2017. Every day I was posting. It was kind of a challenge to me because Instagram was one of the only social media platforms I felt like I hadn't tackled right. I had YouTube with the gaming, did well with that. Check that off the list. Twitter, I had 6,000 followers for being a Twitter Tumblr boy. I was like, good enough for me. Check that off the list. I was like, I've never gotten into Instagram. I should get into Instagram. And so, yeah, started posting all the time, every single day, and built an audience. I would say like probably around like 3,000 to 4,000 followers at that point, all Kansas City, right? My demographics were like 95% Kansas or 99% Kansas City and, nothing else, whatever. And I was still in a relationship at the time. I was doing this, right? And the relationship just was not good. It was very toxic. There was no trust in the relationship. So especially when I started taking pictures of attractive women, it's
Exacerbated
got
it. Yeah.
really bad. And I should have left a long time ago. And I made mistakes and went about it the wrong way and, all that sort of stuff. But when I ended that relationship, I got back into Twitter because, right, I did Twitter as like the Tumblr boy thing. So like my audience was a bunch of women. Like it was probably 70% women, 30% male at that time. And so I was like, I should start posting on Twitter. I should start posting my photos on Twitter. I like how you can post like 4 photos and people can see them and the quality's a lot nicer. And so I got back on Twitter. I had probably like 4,000 followers at that point from, losing like just inactives and that sort of stuff over 2 years. I would post, I would get like 3 likes, nothing, right? I was like, oh my gosh, it's terrible out here. But I messaged a lot of my old friends that had honestly blown up since then. So I had DM'd them and was like, hey, I hope you've been doing well. I know it's been a while, but I'm doing this photography thing, and here's some of my posts. I would love if you could, maybe, retweet it for me or just take a look or whatever. And, would love to reconnect, right? And a lot of them retweeted it for me at that time. Obviously, it's a lot different now because it's like, back then it wasn't like weird to be like, hey, can you please retweet my stuff?
Yeah.
So I got that, and that gave me not a ton of followers, but it gave me like a somewhat active following, right? So now instead of getting 3 likes a post, I was getting 30 likes a post, 40 likes a post, right? And so I just got really into Twitter. I helped form like a little Twitter photo community there on Twitter because there really wasn't one at the time besides just people like you see the hashtag of photography on Twitter. It's like, like bird photos or whatever. And it's just people, doing like hashtag landscape photography. And then it's a photo of a mountain or whatever. So there really wasn't anything besides that. And so I helped kind of create a little Twitter community. And some of my friends saw success in that, right? Like one of my friends went viral for the first time in our little group. She went from like 2,000 followers to like 17,000 followers overnight. Wow. And all of us are like, oh my God, like what's happening? No way. Like, this is crazy. Like Kelsey, holy shit. Like she did the ugly location challenge, where it was, you choose an ugly location and do a portrait in that location and make it look, fun. And then she also did it was a Hobby Lobby challenge where you would go into Hobby Lobby and try and take a portrait in like, like the fake flowers or whatever, right? Yeah. And so she was the one that did those. Both did well. And so in the photo community at that time, it, was something that everybody knew. Everybody was like, oh, Hobby Lobby challenge. Like, so it was wild, right? So she blew up at that point, had like 35,000 followers. And all of us were like, oh my God, this is crazy. This is nuts. And then I started seeing success with my behind the scenes stuff. I had one photo that got like 70,000 likes, right? So I went from 3,000 followers to I think like almost 10K because I have a video of me hitting 10K on Twitter.
Nice.
I was in a taco shop with my friends in Texas that were all photographers, right? I literally have the video. Like my friend started recording an Instagram video like right when it went from 9,999 to 10,000. Super cool. I love looking back on that because it's just good memories with good, photo friends. And but that was kind of like the first time that it was like, wow, like 10,000 followers. This is crazy. I didn't have that on Instagram or anything like that. I was like, dude, Twitter is great. I love this. Like I love this system. It's so much better than Instagram because this was when Instagram was like, it was like the first hit of people being like, why can't I see anybody on my feed? Like, where is like the algorithm really started to kick in at that point, right? And so, yeah, just really dove into Twitter and got around that 10,000 and then kept doing like the behind the scenes stuff because I was like, oh, it really worked that last time. Let's do another one. And then like a month later, did one, boom, 100,000 likes. I was like, this is wild. People love this. And so I kept doing it. And it was like, next one, it was like 30K, next post 60K, next post 150K, next post 200K, next post 350K. Like,
wow, super,
super viral. Like, and I got to do, I got to take photos with like Brother Nature, which nobody really knows who Brother Nature is anymore because he made some mistakes back in 2019, but
that'll happen.
He was like the biggest guy on Twitter at that time, right? He was the guy that fed like the deer on the side of the roads, if you remember.
Oh my God, him. I do remember that video.
Yeah. So that was him, and he was huge at the time, and so we connected. That post, he posted it. It got 350,000 likes. I posted it. It got 250,000 likes. It was just in 2019, I had 250 million impressions on Twitter alone. So I went from 10,000 followers, obviously, to like 100,000 followers within that year. I had hit about 30K before I went to LA because I got a job offer through Twitter, which is hilarious, right? Somebody just tagged me in a post of this tech YouTuber that was looking for people that used iPad because a new iPad Pro was coming out, right? And I edit all of my stuff on iPad Pro. So I replied to him. I was like, hey, my name's Drue. I edit all of my stuff on iPad Pro. Here's some of my work. You know, me just like being the social media guy, I'm like, I should do this because this guy has a following. And if a lot of people like it, I'm gonna get followers, right? That's how I was. I'm very, very social media minded when going through all this stuff. But he DM'd me and he's like, "What are you doing this weekend?" I was like, "The working." And he's
Yeah.
like, "I wanna fly you out to be a part of this iPad video." And I was like, "Oh shit, okay." Yeah. So I went basically to my boss the next day and was like, "So I'm not showing up tomorrow or this whole weekend. I'm flying out to California." And he thought I was talking about the week after. I was like, "No, I'm leaving tomorrow. Like my flight is at 7 a.m. tomorrow. Like I'm not gonna be here." And so luckily got people to cover me, which was great. So I didn't get in trouble there. But went out there and they offered me a job for being there for a day. And so 3 months later, left Apple, drove to California with my brother. You know, I was like, "Hey, you want to move to California?" He was like, "Fuck it." So yeah, so we moved to California and it was a fun experience. And you know, I worked with them for about 6 months. It just wasn't, it didn't work out, and that's fine. But we're still on good terms and everything like that. But gained a lot of experience with that. And but yeah, after that, I was at like 40,000. And then once I got let go, it was like all I had was free time to do creative stuff. And so I started doing stuff for like little mock ads for companies. I was like, I really want to do an Oreo shoot. So I did an Oreo little mock-up thing and it got Oreo's attention, right? They replied and they quote tweeted it. And I was like, this is genius. Like,
Yeah.
I should just be doing this so I can get connected with these people. So I did the same thing with Adidas. I got connected with Adidas. That's how I was able to shoot a campaign with them, was because I did a terrible little lightning photo shoot of the shoes that my dad bought me in my apartment, you know? And so I did that. I did one for Coke. I did, you know, all these different ones. And like back then, I knew I had the traction on Twitter to at least get their attention. And so I was getting all these replies, and people were freaking out. You know how people freak out when the companies are,
Yeah.
like, they reply and they're like, "Oh my God, holy shit!" Like Coca-Cola replied, like, let's go,"
Yeah. Meanwhile, Coca-Cola is
And
run by
so,
Steve, the 24-year-old, like, right? Yeah.
yeah.
Social
So,
media intern.
yeah, it was fun, and
That's sick.
yeah, so it was just wild, dude. It really was. It was insane. Um that like I just had stuff that went super viral on Twitter, and then that went like so viral that then people were screenshotting it and throwing it onto Instagram. And so then all my stuff was getting posted on meme pages. Like I was literally posted on meme, like Meme on Instagram. It has like 10, 15, 20 million followers or whatever. Didn't get tagged for it. So that was very frustrating, as a
Yeah.
photographer. I'm like, you should have tagged me. But then I also then got onto like an art hub on Instagram. I was like, this is crazy. These people own like 30 accounts that have millions of followers, right? It's like their top one is like 10 million, and then it trickles down because all they do is they're like, they post and they're like, "Hey, go check out this other
Right.
page that does the same thing," and it's all ran by one person, or at least like a company. And so I got on that, and so that's when I saw my Instagram following go from 30,000 followers to 100,000 followers in 2 days. I was like,
Wow.
this is nuts. I'm like, what is happening? I was also a little sad because I passed myself on Twitter, and I'm like, I had to tweet out, I am officially no longer a Twitter photographer. I am now an Instagram photographer.
That's funny.
Um,
What
and
is your
so,
what is your relationship like with social media now? Because as a person who has an incredibly tiny following, I feel no pressure to create. I feel no pressure to post. I feel no
mm,
pressure to be anything other than myself. But
that's good.
that cheesy Spider-Man line sort of works from a social media perspective, because with great following comes great responsibility to be incredibly active, to be posting a lot,
Yeah.
sharing a lot. What is your current relationship like with social media?
Yeah. So I'll be honest. The pandemic was very rough for me because like I said, I'm not afraid to share. I was very extremely social media minded when it came to my photography, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was very little. I mean, it was still about the photography, obviously, and learning and sharing that sort of stuff, but it was more of what is going to go viral, what is going to get views, how can I do that, and what is the best way to, go about that, right? So I really leaned into that stuff, right? So social media took over my life. And I'm just very fortunate that I had that experience previously with the video game stuff, as far as like the following and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So my ego wasn't as shot through the roof as it was when I was, a 16-year-old gamer getting a following,
Right.
where I felt like a freaking god at certain points, like that's just how you had to survive back then. So it was crazy because during the pandemic, it dude, it was just hard because obviously a lot of things happened during the pandemic, right? A lot of political things happened
Mm-hmm.
during the pandemic. Um, Stuff that I personally just don't really enjoy talking about. I've never really had a strong care for a lot of those things, which,
Mm-hmm.
later in life I probably will, but it's like I just didn't really like I cared, but like I didn't at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, this is just a lot. And with the following, I got like people were put expectations on me to voice
Commentate.
an
Yeah.
opinion and to be this person that's like, because I was like the head of Twitter. I was like the head of photo Twitter at that point. Like I was top dog. There was nobody really else besides the, Brandon Wolfel, but he's just had success on other platforms. So like he was still had a following, but he wasn't considered like, the photo Twitter person. I was the photo Twitter person. Everybody, I was a Twitter photographer, and all my Instagram friends made fun of me for it. But it was just wild. People expected so much from me. And also it was just I hit a huge creative wall, right? And so I had to really think about a lot of things this last couple of years of like, why am I even doing photography? Like this social media stuff, it took over my life. Obviously being like inactive for like a year and a half, you see that following deplete. So I've had to go through that recently. It's like, as much as it's like, I don't want this to bother me, it still bothers me. It bothers me to this day. It's like I can sometimes barely hit 1,000 likes on a post when I was spoiled with 10,000 to 15,000 likes every post
Mm-hmm.
that I did. And, it just got bad because I wasn't doing new content. So I was trying to stay active, but I was just reposting the same stuff. And people were like, dude, like we've seen all these things and like we get it. Like, I'm sorry, like this is all I have. Like
Yeah.
I haven't posted anything new and I apologize. This is just what did well for me. And so it was just bad, right? But it was hard being in that position because I mean I had people unfollow me and send me big long messages about how I didn't deserve my following because I wasn't
Wow.
speaking on certain situations. Um, they were like, if I had that following, I'd be using it for the better good and all this stuff. And like, I was like, all right, then go get your own following.
Yeah. Right.
Like
It's not mine.
I'm sorry, like that's just like I had a lot of stuff going on, like personally with my life. And it was like, dude, I just don't want that in my mentions. Like, I fully support what you're talking about, and I've been liking stuff about all that stuff, and I've been retweeting stuff about it. But like, I don't think that I need to say anything about it. Like, it's
Mm-hmm.
at this point for me, it's like, well, duh. Like, if anybody that thinks that way is stupid, in my opinion, and I just don't want that in my mentions, right? I'm
Yeah.
not trying
Fuck
to
off.
create this
No,
this
just fuck
thing
off.
where I have to
Yeah.
look at this, right? And so, I was like, how do I go about this being really nice? Because like when people attack me, I get very defensive and I can get very mean because of my Xbox background. I'm like, dude, I know what to say. I can, dude, it's really bad. I can tear people apart and say some really mean stuff. And so I was like, how do I go about this in a nice way? But I, bluntly put it to him. I was like, dude, I think you're on social media too much. Like if you think that me posting something about this situation is going to change anything, you are
Sorely
insane.
mistaken. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just that's
You
not
know what
how
I
it works,
find?
and I urge you to try and get off of it a little bit.
You know what
So that it was
someone
hard for me.
Yeah, someone tweeted something today that I found that I like really really aligned myself with, and it was like, just because you follow me on social media doesn't mean that you have access to me, right? Like
Yeah,
that this is social media. This is not real life. We're not friends. You follow me. You interact with my stuff. You may DM me and tell me I'm great, but we are not friends. We are not acquaintances. We are not real life people in the same sphere. And I think people, when they get behind that screen, they forget that a lot of times, and it can have negative consequences for you, for them, and it just ultimately leads. It's a toxic place, is what it ultimately boils down to.
No,
it's a toxic
it is.
place.
It's extremely toxic, and even now it's extremely toxic, and it's upsetting, honestly, the state that it's in right now. No, it was just really hard because I lost motivation to do anything photography related. I wasn't happy with anything I was doing because in my mind, I'm like, this isn't going to go viral. Like, this just isn't good enough to hit that level of what I wanted, right? And so I really struggled with that. On top of people like expecting me to do things and all this stuff, I was like, I am sick of this. Like, I don't want to be on this application anymore. I muted pretty much half of my timeline, blocked so many people. And yeah, it was hard during that time with the followers. And even now, dude, it's still weird, especially in this NFT space. And it's like, I can't really talk to people about this because it's
they're at the beginning.
It's like, well, it's just like, oh, poor me. I have so many followers. It's so hard. It's like, I don't want to be that person, because like it sounds like that. And I get that. But like, especially in this NFT space, I think it's hard for me with a following to get into it because people see me as somebody like, oh, he's already established. Oh, he already has this. Like, he doesn't need anything. Like, does he even need this? Like, he already has all these, he's got 120K on Twitter, 150K on Instagram, 500K on TikTok. Like, this guy's good. He doesn't need our help or whatever. And it's like, I'm over here like, bitch, I am broke. Please, somebody, please, somebody help me.
Yeah.
So it's been weird. There's pros and cons to having a following. I think it's been really cool because I'm able to connect with people a lot easier. And that's just because I have a fun number beside my name. And I think it's silly that, that's how it works, but that's how it works. And so it's opened up a lot of doors. It opened up the door back into the gaming world for me. I'm a part of a gaming team as a photographer.
Sweet.
Yeah, that's how I got to meet my girlfriend. I got flown out to take photos at the Fortnite World Cup. I had a couple free days in New York. She happened to be in New York, and that's how I met her for the first time. So,
dude,
just all these like weird little things that, happen for a reason. And, yeah, it's just, dude, it's crazy to think about all this because when I picked up a camera, I never in my life thought that it would be this, or it wasn't my intention to do that, right? Like, I didn't get into photography to be like, I want to get a lot of followers or like, I want to blow up. Like, obviously it was like, that would be cool, but it wasn't like, that just wasn't what it was about. It was about just learning and being like, oh, this is really fun. I'm learning all these things. And yeah, man, it's wild when I think about it. I'm extremely grateful to be in the position that I'm in. Even after, the year and a half of inactive things, it's like I still am very grateful. I still have I've had a lot of really cool opportunities. I've met a lot of cool people, made a lot of really awesome connections with people, and I'm extremely blessed to be in the position that I'm in. And I know that, and I remind myself of that every single day. And so it's I hate, the thing I hate so much is when people meet me and they're like, dude, I'm so nervous to like talk to you. I'm like, why are you nervous? Like, don't do that to me. Like, that makes me feel so weird. Like, I'm not that cool. I'm not cool. I am not cool. Like, stop.
I disagree. I disagree.
But
that is funny. It's like, dude, I'm not the number next to my name on Twitter, right? Like, I'm just a person. Like, that is not. Yeah, that's funny. I think you said something that's super interesting because my relationship with social media is very love-hate, right? So like, I hate Instagram because I've got to post reels so someone will actually see my fucking shit. And I love Twitter, but I've loved Twitter for 10 years, right? And I was never really focused on how many followers I had or how many likes I was getting. And now I'm almost like, wow, I think I may have made a mistake not focusing on that stuff. And I think what it really ultimately boils down to is it's super irrelevant, right? I get to wake up, and 2 years ago, I lost a job. It brought me to this path where I now am able to pick up a camera every day I want, go to work, create cool shit, whether it's for myself or for someone else. And that's just fucking blessed, right? I'm not rich. I'm not poor. I'm surviving. and I'm making the most out of my life, and that
Absolutely.
ultimately is what's important, right? It's not
Yeah.
it's not the number of people who follow you, the number of people who like your stuff. While all those things make you feel good for 45 seconds, at the end of the day, if you're able to create a life for yourself where you're happy, where you're fulfilled, where you're able to do the thing you love, that's ultimately the only thing you can ask out of life, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. 1,000%. It's like I've always, what is, like wealthy or being rich in your mind? Like, what is success, right?
Mm,
What is success in your mind? Success in my mind is just being okay with where I'm at today and living today the best that I can and enjoying what I'm doing. That is success to me. It is just being okay,
yeah.
just being okay, like
But for a
feeling
while,
okay,
you
being
probably
in
didn't.
in the thing.
For a while, you didn't put any focus on being okay, right? And the
No.
growth of no, but like to pay you a compliment, the growth of yourself as an individual human being to understand that being okay in and of itself is success is huge. Because a lot of people measure success is how much money's in the bank, what car am I driving, what watch is on my wrist, and a number of things that don't ultimately fulfill human beings, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
to be able to cognitively look at yourself and say, I just am happy and I feel fulfilled being okay is fucking amazing.
Yeah, and I'm trying to get to that point, right? Because these last couple of years have been really hard.
Sure.
It was a reminder for me. I had suicidal thoughts for the first time in 9 years, dude. That scared the shit out of me.
Yeah.
And it was very hard for me because it's like I felt like a failure, for the first time in a long time. Like obviously, you have things where you feel like a failure, but I felt like a true failure because it's like, how did I allow myself to get back to this point? Because I spent, like I said, I was in rehab and I stayed for 6 months because I was like, I want to make sure that I'm good. And, I felt like I had those tools and all that stuff, but this last year, 2 years has been a real test,
Well,
it's been really hard.
I would really hope that the extraneous circumstances of a global pandemic allows you
Yeah.
the
Yes, I
leash
know. I
to
gotta
yeah.
let be a little bit more lenient on myself. I
Yeah.
get that, but
If
still, at
there's
the same
any
time, it freaked me out.
no, it's understandable because you're not that person anymore. So to have those reoccurrent feelings that you had a decade ago is alarm bells, which ultimately proves that you're in a much better position than you were 10 years ago, right? That in and of itself
Exactly.
is proof that you've made to a place that is acceptable and wonderful.
Yep.
I like to spend the last bit of every podcast doing like a little bit of a rapid Q&A. Some are easy,
Yes.
some are
Cool.
hard.
I'll try my best. I
But
talk a
yeah,
lot. I
just
apologize.
first thing or whatever that comes to mind. But what's your favorite book?
Ooh, whew. Let's do the series of unfortunate events because it's the last and probably only book that I've actually ever read in my life. Yeah, the whole series. It's the only series that I've fully read, and I read it in like middle school,
Is
and
that
I probably haven't read a book since.
Lemony
Lemony
Snicket?
Snicket.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
nice.
loved it. Series of
What's
unfortunate events. My favorite.
what's your favorite movie
Favorite movie. Oh
or
gosh. Oh
movies? You can give me a
gosh.
couple.
Let's see. Off the top of the dome, let's go with Waterboy. Let's go
Nice.
with Inception.
Oh yeah.
Let's go with gosh, I'm trying to think favorite movies of all time. I'm a big sucker for like anime and stuff like that. Like Naruto, love Naruto. Lots
Hmm.
of fun lessons in there. Yeah, that's all I can think of right
Cool.
now.
What's your favorite food?
Favorite food? I guess it depends on the day, but I do love some Mexican food and basically anything with a lot of cheese. Queso dip is a top tier thing. And
Nice.
realizing that queso is not like a true Mexican dish,
It's an
like it
American
was,
thing.
yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
it's like, what?
You're like fuck
Yeah,
me.
so
Why is
yeah,
it called queso and not like cheese
I
dip?
know. I know, right? So yeah, I love Mexican food and Chinese food. Those are probably the two top faves for me.
Nice. Do you believe in an afterlife?
Ooh, that's a good question. Kind of, right? Because of my experience with rehab, I really clinged on to the belief of a higher power, right? So I do believe that there's something greater than myself out there. I do believe it's putting me on the right path. As far as the afterlife, I do believe in something. I just don't know what that is. Is
Sure.
it reincarnation? Is it heaven? Is it all these things? I'm not sure. I should think about that more and have like a more firm belief, I think, personally, because that would just mentally, I think, be good for me. But I think where I'm at now is good enough, and I believe that there is something out there for sure. I just don't know what it is.
I agree. And being that this is going to be about my 81st episode, um, it's a very common 70 to 80%. I would say like 8 to 10 people think there's something else, which I find incredibly reassuring.
Yeah, yeah.
What inspires you?
Everything. People. I get inspired by literally anything I can, right? Because I relate it to my rehab experiences with like trying to find little things that happen throughout my day. It's like as cheesy as it is, dude, you can find inspiration in everything. Like if you go to the mall, like look at like I go into Sephora and look at the beauty makeup photos. I'm like looking at the eyeballs of these models and I'm like, how did they set up this lighting? Oh, it looks like they used a bounce and like a big softbox over here on the left side. And it's like, oh, you can see that. And it's like, I find inspiration with everything, even like bottles, like Coca-Cola bottles or like any sort of product, because it's like there is a team behind it that chose specific colors to present this product. Why did they choose these colors? What do these colors mean? Like I really try and find inspiration in everything. As far as just like in life in general, though, it's just people, man. People inspire me. The connections that I have, those people inspire me, and to the people that I've lost through addiction also inspire me to keep going, to keep doing what I'm doing, to be a model for them. And it's not fair to them. I feel like I owe it to them to keep doing what I'm doing because yeah, that's a little deeper thing, but yeah,
That
those
was
people inspire me too.
that's very beautiful. I like that. What gives you confidence?
Ooh, the confidence has been a tough thing for me, even now. I'm dummy confident in the things that I know I'm good at,
Mm-hmm.
but outside of that, I struggle with confidence quite a bit. But as far as what keeps me confident, man, it's really hard for me. I need to be better about, constantly giving myself affirmations and that sort of stuff. But as far as confidence in that realm, it's like really it's on you to get yourself confidence. It's you got to check yourself. You got to tell yourself good things because the more you hear something, the more you're going to believe it regardless. So like when you keep telling yourself these negative things, like of course you're going to think negatively about yourself because you're the one talking to yourself all the time. So you're going to believe it. So
Mm-hmm.
start telling yourself happy things. I need to start doing that too and speak it out in a mirror to yourself. That's how you build confidence within yourself in anything that you want to do. Talk to yourself, reassure yourself, consistently do it, fake it till you make it. It works.
I love that. What's the best piece of advice someone has ever given you?
I've got a lot of those, right? Because of the rehab thing. I think what I just shared is a great piece for me. Another piece is you can't change anything about anybody. You can only change yourself. You can be an inspiration for people to better themselves, but you can't physically change anything that somebody is going to do. Ultimately, is up for them to decide, and they have to be the ones to figure that out, right? You can't be the ones to give them the answer. And truly understanding that, because people understand that, right? They do, but no, not a lot of people fully accept that, right? Like they don't. I don't think they truly, really think about it, and so there's just a lot of things that it's like it's out of your control. Don't let it bother you, as terrible like the situation with my brother, for example. It's like, if he decides to go drink and kill himself, that's that's his decision.
Mm-hmm.
I have voiced how I feel about the situation. I've done everything that I can, but I can't do anything about the situation. As bad as that sounds, and as much as I don't want that to happen, it is a possibility and it is out of my control. And so just being aware of that sort of thing, and that's probably the best advice. And I'll think about 20 other answers as well when we keep going. But yeah.
I think that's a crucially important thing that you touched upon there is letting go and allowing people to control their own outcomes, right? Like be confident and be comfortable in what your level of input is into someone else's life and understand that at the end of the day, the rest is up to them. I
Yep.
think that's super important. Last question. Give me a recommendation for something that you've recently consumed. It could be a TV show, a movie, a podcast, a book, anything,
Uh,
just a video game, whatever you want. Just give me something that you've recently consumed that you think everyone should check out.
hmm. Okay, so this will be a little bit of a weird one. I'm going to share you something that I've been doing personally that I learned in rehab. So it's not necessarily a book or anything that you can pick up. That's been helping me out quite a bit. I will give you like a show that I've been watching that's been fun, but I'm also going to give you this one. So I do this thing I've been trying to do this thing daily. It's called 10 at 10. And what it was is that we would go over the 10th step of AA at 10 o'clock. So that's just why we called it 10 at 10. What the 10th step is it's just a self-assessment of your day, right? It's just really checking yourself. And so every day at 10 o'clock, I would go through my fears for the day, my resentment for the day, my ego, my dishonesty, my amends, and gratitude. And doing that helps so much just every day because you don't realize how much shit you have piled up in your life, right? It's
Hmm.
funny, they told me in rehab, it's like you are all sitting on a giant pile of shit and you guys don't even realize it because you're so used to the smell,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And it's like that's how it gets, right? And it's like if you're not actively trying to clean that up or at least acknowledge it, you're not going to know that it's there. And so doing that self-assessment, one, gets you to do that, right? You're cleaning out the stuff in your life. You're finding all these things and really speaking it out, whether it be, a fear that happened, 5 years ago, or like you resent something from somebody that happened 10 years ago. It's like if it bothered you today, lay it out, put it out. And that is something that I wish more people did, just some sort of self-assessment, asking yourself questions and digging deeper. But on the fun side of things, Moon Knight. I don't know
Oh
if you've been
yeah.
watching Moon Knight on Disney Plus, but oh my gosh, it's so good. And the recent episodes have been very Inception-y feely, and I'm like, oh my God, I love this. It's got like a deep story. It's like heart tuggy, and I'm like, this is great. It's all like fun animation, fun like weird twist, like deep kind of like wow, hard struggle, and then like Inception, like mind mess. All yeah, I'm like, this is great. I can't wait. I think actually an episode came out today, so I'm gonna have
Tomorrow.
to
Tomorrow.
watch that
Wednesday.
tomorrow. Okay,
Yeah.
tomorrow. Can't wait for it. I'm
Yeah.
so
I
excited.
watch it too. It's great. I'm going to recommend The Dropout on Hulu with Amanda Seyfried playing Elizabeth Holmes,
Yes.
the Theranos psychopath. Holy shit. Amanda Seyfried is incredible in this role. The scale of the fraud that Elizabeth Holmes committed as the head of this company is remarkable. I had watched a documentary on it like a year or two ago, and I was
Yeah.
floored by it then. And then watching it get acted out by professionals was just wild. She was so good. She better win an
Which one
award.
is this?
The Dropout.
The Dropout. What is it? It's a
It's
it's
on
a
Hulu.
film based off a
It's a
documentary
it's
or
an
a real
eight
story.
show series about the Elizabeth Holmes who created the company
Which one?
Theranos with the blood testing in the little capsules that never really existed. It was fucking it's wild.
Interesting.
Watch it.
Dude, I
It's
love that
crazy.
stuff.
It's
I
crazy.
love that stuff.
She recently was found guilty on X number of accounts out of X number of things, and she doesn't
Oof,
get sentenced till September. I hope
that's
that she
crazy.
gets 20 plus fucking years. This
Yeah.
person is a fucking
Just
lunatic.
terrible.
Terrible
Yeah,
human being.
that's crazy, dude. I love documentaries like that. I'm trying to think of the most recent one that I watched, dude. My girlfriend's obsessed with like the serial killer, just like crime stuff. So I've watched all of them. That's on like Hulu and HBO Max and all of that stuff. There's some really interesting ones. There's actually one that's like hits home here in Nashville because there's like a cult church here and there's a documentary on it. I can't remember what it's called, but it's crazy because like 6 months ago, the founders of this church, like the head honchos, they all died in a plane crash in the lake like 20 minutes from me.
Wow.
Like we literally went and took photos like 3 days after the crash that they like police were still everywhere like searching for the bodies because they hadn't found them. Dude, it's wild. Super cults, like super crazy, like just like it's crazy how easily people can manipulate people when they're
Mhm.
in these
Searching
like
area.
these yeah, when they're in that period of time where they feel lost. And it's just it's wild to me. Like I love that sort of stuff, like diving in deeper into like how us humans operate, right? Because we all operate very similarly as much as we want to like have our differences. like what I learned in rehab is like, dude, we are all the
Yeah,
same.
we're
Like
monkeys. We're apes.
we're all the
Yeah.
same, bro. Like we relate so heavily. Even if you have a different experience than me, we experience similar emotions. And you can relate to me in some sort of way. It's not going to be the exact way, but the issue is if I'm not open to that, that's where it becomes an issue. It's when you close that off and it's like you don't understand how I feel. That's not true. You do understand how I feel to an extent, right?
Yeah, we just
And so it's
disagree.
like yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
which is
So
totally fine.
I love that stuff.
Me too,
And yeah,
man.
I appreciate all the questions, bro. I do.
I'm
It's
with
been
you.
fun.
I've got a very cheesy line. If you've been on my podcast, you're part of my family. Drue, I find you to be one of my true joys out of this whole NFT space. You're just a really cool fucking dude, and I'm super glad that we've been able to become friends in this space over this couple months or whatever that we've been interacting. I'm inspired by your work. I'm inspired by the person that you are, and I'm incredibly appreciative of you spending this hour with me today. And I just really, really greatly enjoyed my time. And thank you so much for coming on.
No, thank you for having me here, man. And ditto, bro. It's just been cool, man. Like I said, dude, connections are everything to me, and it's so cool that we're able to make these connections on the internet. Even 20 years ago, like this was a very unknown. My mom was like, "Don't talk to anybody on the internet. They're all gonna kidnap you and do all these things to you." And it's just wild. Yeah. And I appreciate the connection that we've been able to make. And I appreciate you connecting me with your friend Taylor. And I'm excited to hang out with her tomorrow and meet her. And yeah, that's what life's all about, man. It's all about the connections that you make. And yeah, I just appreciate the relationship that we've created, our little friendship here, even just over Twitter Spaces. And dude, it's crazy that you've only been doing this photography stuff for 2 years. I didn't know that. That's super cool. And yeah, I'm proud of you, man. Like keep going. Like those are in my opinion, like the best times, right? For me and my photography journey was like those first couple years, because eventually you're gonna hit that wall and it's gonna be tough. But like, bro, enjoy it, man. You're in that like.
Create.
You're
create.
in that, dude. Yeah, dude. And I'm proud of you for doing that. And I'm happy that you're in a spot where, you feel happy doing what you're doing. And I think ultimately, for me, that's all I can ask for, right? Is being happy doing what I'm doing. I don't need to be a millionaire. I don't need to have all these nice things. As long as I have a roof over my head and I have transportation and I'm enjoying what I'm doing, man, I'm good. And that's all I need. And, yeah, it's just cool. I appreciate your insight on everything. And yeah, I just love it. I love this. And thank you for having me on the podcast. And yeah, sorry for talking so much.
Don't be sorry, man.
I love talking.
A fucking man. I love you. Thank you so much for coming on. Take it easy.